Kindergarten teachers of Reddit, what's the funniest thing a new parent has said to you the first day of school? I was a camp counselor many years ago. On pickup day, I had a parent tell me what she said to her friend on the first day of camp. I'm not sure I trust that counselor. They shouldn't let people who can't breathe on their own take care of children in the outdoors. She thought my Camelback water bottle backpack was an oxygen tank. Her friend set her straight before she spent all week worrying I was going to collapse dead in front of her child. Yeah, she's always talking about monsters and crying about them before bed. Oh, Maya loves The Walking Dead. We watch it together every night. In regards to her 3-year-old, who we complained was constantly hurting other kids pretending to be a monster. As a behavioral health intern, I once saw a 6-year-old child who was wetting the bed nightly for over a year. After a 5-minute conversation, it emerged that he was afraid to get out of bed at night to use the bathroom because he had, with his parents, watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre and was afraid of the dark. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not an appropriate movie for a 6-year-old. On the very first day of class, a kid's mother pulled me aside to tell a tragic story of how her husband, the kindergartner's father, had died 2 years prior. Because of the emotional impact of the death, she had never completed potty training the child. She went on to explain how her son still wore diapers and that she was planning to drive to the school every day to change his diapers at lunch. I expressed sympathy for their loss and firmly, but gently, explained that this was not possible. Mainstream kindergartners must be potty trained in order to be admitted to the school, and all the other kids would be quick to catch on that little kiddo's mom led him to the potty every day at lunch. The conversation happened on Monday. The kid was magically potty trained by Thursday. When my son was in 3rd grade, we went to a teacher conference and was asked if my son goes by a different name. As soon as the question came out, I started laughing uncontrollably. Apparently he had been writing his name as Retta on all his papers because it was a new year and thought it would be badass. At home he had been begging us to calling him that for weeks. Well, it's pretty badass. My wife had a student named Anusha. At a parent meeting the father was very concerned other students would call her Anus Ha. Rookie mistake. Always consider how other kids will make fun of yours before you settle on the name. University of Iowa. During student orientation, a parent asks during Q&A, "What time is curfew?" Not the first day of school, but one day I wore a purple dress. One young lad walked next to me and said, "Mrs. Teacher, you just look so nice today in your purple dress. You almost look as good as me." This is my favorite. Had a dad tell me that I was hot. His son thought I was hot, and if I wore a dress skirt to work his son would most definitely stick his hand up my dress skirt. I thought he was trying to be funny. I learned my lesson. Dad was being serious about his son. That is messed up on so many levels. My dad brought me to the wrong school on the first day of kindergarten. Make sure little Johnny keeps his pants on. He'll hump anything. I'm quite young, in my 20s, and when the new parents saw me, the wife spat out, "I don't want my kid being around that sapling." It was also my first day at that job, so that was nice and all. 1 year later and both parents are still cold as ice towards me. They don't even respond when I greet them. If it would have been in my private time I would get quite mad, but I know better than getting in some dispute with anyone in an environment like that. Not per definition funny, but it was my first response I got at this job and basically the only thing worth mentioning. I'm not a teacher, but the parent who had to explain to the teacher that when my 1-5-year-old was crying after whiskey, he was actually talking about a toy pony. And by pony, you mean a bottle of Blanton's. I'm just gonna stick around for the rest of the day, probably the rest of the week, too. Ha 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 ha. No, get out of the classroom, hug them, tell them you love them, and get out. Otherwise they are going to cry and cry when mommy finally leaves. It's like ripping off a band-aid. Leave quickly and we'll handle the rest. My kid started kindergarten today. His words to me were, "I can't wait to go to school and be a good boy and work my butt off." I worked as a teacher's aide in a kindergarten class, and this one mother said to me, "He hasn't had much interaction with kids," just as he walks up to a little girl and yanks her arm until she cries. The kid had undergone autism and the mother denied it for most of the year. She also would send food, freeze-dried chili and peppers and other random stuff for him to eat at lunch with instructions that I make sure he eats it and force feed him if need be. The mom would get so mad at me because he never ate any of it. I didn't eat lunch with the kid as I was not his personal aide. I was a classroom aide and had other responsibilities. I tried explaining to her that he needs a diagnosis for a personal aide. She called me a high schooler. However, I was working on a master's in psychology at the time. The fact that she was in such denial and blamed you for the kid's behavior makes me mad. Please make sure the other kids don't scuff his Uggs up or try them on. End of day. Did you want to powder your nose before I take your picture? It'll be on Facebook and Twitter. She rubbed me the wrong way. This was at a preschool for low-income families, by the way. I was a camp counselor for many years. I had this kid Daniel. He would pretend to drown, and when I jumped in the water to save him, he would try to take my bathing suit top off. After like 3 days of this, I started wearing a one piece, but he would still try to pull it down and laugh his 12-year-old butt off in the process. I would have been flattered, I guess, except I kept having to dive in the freaking pool. You can't exactly tell if this is the one time the kid is actually drowning. He eventually got suspended from pool privileges, but he managed to lay a kiss on me on the last day of camp. 2 days later, his mother complained to my bosses that I had acted inappropriately towards her son. If my camp manager hadn't already been informed about the situation with the kid, I probably would have gotten into serious trouble. Anyways, he's probably sexually harassing people now. She needs sunscreen applied every morning before recess and after lunch. Okay, I'll just lather your kid up while the other 21 wreak havoc on my classroom. I had to explain to my daughter's teacher that she'll occasionally connect markers end to end, then go full Leonidas on chairs, walls, pets, other kids, and testicles. Girl guide leader checking in. First day of orientation, telling all the parents about things we have planned. Camps, crafts, songs, special events we do throughout our year, museum trips, camps with the Boy Scouts, and even spa night. And they all seemed thrilled, girls and parents alike. We then go into fundraising, which for us is almost exclusively selling cookies. There was an uproar of I am not teaching Mackenzie an unhealthy lifestyle and my Claire is not allowed to eat them. Why should I sell them? We should sell oranges or carrots, and even the amount of GMOs in those cookies is disgusting. I am not giving my Nicole breast cancer. Hi sir, I am selling this small pack Brussels sprouts for $5.99. We are trying to raise money for our school. Slam. You know where I could get a dime bag? Had to warn my son's teacher that he will hold his poop until it's the size of a forearm and it may clog the toilets. I taught Sunday school to kindergarten-aged munchkins when I was in high school. One child's family was going through a divorce, and the mother brought a printed copy of a made-up Bible story where Micah and Deborah get married, have children, and then get a divorce. The story emphasized how much the parents still loved the children and that the children could still be happy with each parent individually. The mother asked us to read the story to the class every once in a while because her son had been taking the divorce really personally. Thought it was his fault and that his parents were punishing him for being bad. That poor kid had a rough year. I was a TA volunteer in a grade 1 class. I got warnings from the teacher about a number of students. This one swears like a mofo. Be firm. That girl there likes to go behind the school and kiss all the boys. Major tantrums, etc. Oh, I have one. But it's what my father said to her kindergarten teacher. I am not the teacher in question. My father is crushingly brilliant, but has had a rather unconventional life and it has affected his parenting style. My sister, who was quite shy and introverted in her younger days, was in class when one of the students nearby was misbehaving. The teacher mistook the source of misbehavior as being my sister. The teacher decided to get in my sister's personal space in order to scold her, to which my sister responded, "Get out of my face." The teacher ended up calling my father to discuss the incident with him. When she asked what he thought she should do, presumably in terms of how to discipline my sister, my father responded, "I think you should get out of her frickin' face." My sister is now a lawyer, by the way, so if anyone gets in her face, I'd be really careful. Not a kindergarten teacher, but when I was in 12th grade I was leading a tour of my school, JK12, for 2 Asian, I want to say Chinese but I'm not 100% sure. Parents and their first grade daughter. I was asked what percentage of Asian students would be in child's name class. This isn't necessarily funny, but I also was a camp counselor for 4-5-year-olds. On meet and greet day, the Friday before camp was due to start, I had one parent say to me, I know you're only supposed to give each child one snack but Johnny gets so hungry so just give him all of your leftover snacks. Okay, Johnny was the size of a small whale. He didn't need those extra snacks. I was teaching a class how to write a song. Very basic stuff. We needed to come up with a title based on our story of a bunch of goblins eating a village. The kids yelled out standard stuff. Dance of the Halloween Goblins. Wrath of the Goblin Vomit. Then one kid stands up, with the most crap-eating-est grin I have ever seen and yells, Wrath of the Big Wiener. I laughed so hard I cried. And the student, although that his comment had made me extremely sad, but that was one of the greatest gifts they ever gave me. I'm not a kindergarten teacher, but a teacher nonetheless. You couldn't pay me enough to teach kindergarten. My first ever day of teaching my own classroom, a mother came to me and handed me a list of all the special accommodations her child needed. Does anyone remember in the Bugs Bunny cartoons where he opens the scroll and it just keeps rolling down the floor? That is how I felt reading this thing. I would have appreciated it very much if a child had any kind of disability, illness, or sensitivity. Instead, it had items on the list like, child is bladder shy. The bathroom has to be completely empty for him to use the toilet. There were 2 boys' toilets for the entire school. It wasn't going to happen. And when child has not slept well, he needs to spend an hour watching TV on his iPad. There were more, but I've forgotten them. I politely refused. She claimed I was a terrible teacher. The principal and my mentor became involved, and I had to deal with her the rest of the year. Welcome to teaching. I am positive that many elementary school teachers get hit on by their kids' dads. One of the girls I used to work with at an after-school program is engaged right now. Her superiors decided to turn a blind eye to the fact that she met Mr. Fiancé when his child was in her program. My wife is a kindergarten teacher but she doesn't read it, so here is hers by proxy. Her mom approached her at Meet the Teacher night and said that this year her youngest would be starting and she, the mom, would likely have separation issues. She asked if she could come in every day at nap time and nap with her kid. A little bragging, but my wife is a very requested teacher. Go baby. One year she had a child assigned to her class that had severe allergies. EpiPen, could die if not gotten to quick kind of allergies. When my wife found out, first day, she informed the parent that the child would have to be moved to the allergy class. The parent wanted her child in my wife's class so bad that they told the principal that they would have their lawyer draw up papers relieving the school from responsibility. The principal moved the child. All this just to get the kid in the class with the agriculture club. This year she has a child that, according to the mother, has allergies to dairy, sugar and food dye. My wife told her that they do a lot of parties, reward cupcakes and the like. The mother said the child would do without, except on Friday, when the mother said she would come to school to take the child out for cake and ice cream for a treat. WTF. Not a teacher, but I get some good stories from my friend's mom. She has 2 radically opposing forces in her classroom this year, with little sympathy from the administration of course. One girl cannot be in an environment warmer than exactly 72 degrees Fahrenheit or she could have a seizure, and one boy is allergic to the cold and will break out in severe hives if the temp drops too low. Since the climate control system is uniform throughout the building, friend's mom had to bring in a small AC unit from home for the girl to sit by, while the boy is seated on the opposite end of the room in the sun at all times. Mind you, there are multiple teachers' classrooms available, so the logical solution would be to have them in separate rooms. You already know that this isn't the case. In a strange turn of events, the 2 children grow up to marry each other. My mom is a preschool teacher, and one day, after telling a little girl that telling someone else that they stink isn't polite, the girl turned around, looked the other girl in the eye and said, "You stink please?" Tangentially related, but when I was in elementary school, I said something I will never forget to my teacher at the time. "You know why I like you, Mrs. Bland? Why is that? Fried potato. You've got to figure that just won't quit." Cue possibly the loudest, hardest laughter I have ever heard from anyone in my life. So much so that it kind of scared me a little. I had heard it elsewhere and knew it was supposed to be funny, but being a young kid, I didn't fully appreciate the context of what it totally meant. My husband took our oldest to his meet the teacher night this year. He told me when he met our kid's first grade teacher he told her he has issues with swearing. We are working on it. Sorry in advance. When he came home and told me that, I almost died laughing. I have on videotape my first day of kindergarten and it's full of grandpa hitting on my teacher. To be fair, Mrs. Jensen was hot, but nothing's worth grandma's wrath. My cousin taught kindergarten for a few years in a small town in the Midwest. This is the story of a kid whose name was his dad's name spelled backwards. No joke. This kid was odd to say the least, which wasn't a surprise when you met the parents and their other 4 kids. The first story I heard was that this kid would walk around with his pointer finger next to his face and talk to it like a person. His finger was named Junior, but he'd say it as a Don Tracy-esque private eye like Junior. The school finally took action when during quiet time he went up to another kid and stabbed him in the back with a pencil. You've been visited by the toothpaste man. For good teeth and fresh breath, comment "Oh fresh." If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.